On the heptad. 7 is not born of any mother and is a virgin. The sequence from the monad to it added together totals 28. The 28 days of the moon are fulfilled hebdomad by hebdomad. Starting with the monad and making a sequence by doubling, 7 numbers yield 64, the first square which is also a cube. 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64. Doing the same but trebling, 7 numbers yield 729, the second square and cube. 1, 3, 9, 27, 81, 243, 729. Moreover, the hebdomad consisting of the 3 dimensions, length, breadth and depth, and the 4 limits, point, line, surface and solid, reveals corporeality. 7 is said to be the number of the primary concord, the fourth, and of the geometric proportion, 1, 2, 4. It is also called that which brings completion. 7 encompasses the sides around the right angle of the archetypal right-angled triangle. The length of one is 4, of the other 3. The reason for the 7th number being an object of reverence is as follows. The providence of the Creator God wrought all things by basing on the firstborn one the source and root of the creation of the universe, which comes to be an impression and representation of the highest good, and he located the perfection and fulfillment of completion in the decad itself, and the Creator God necessarily considered that the hebdomad was an instrument and his most authoritative limb, and has gained the power of creativity. For by nature, and not by our own devices, the hebdomad is a mean between the monad and the decad, and the means between extremes are in a sense more authoritative than the extremes themselves, because the terms on either side incline towards the means. Not only do 4 and 7 mediate between the monad and the decad by the arithmetically equal relationship, and when added together their sum is equal to the sum of the extremes, and 4 exceeds 1 by the same amount that 7 is less than 10, and conversely 4 is less than 10 by the same amount that 7 exceeds 1. Not only this, but also the numbers from the monad to the tetrad are potentially 10, while the decad is this very thing in actuality, and 7 is the arithmetic mean between the tetrad and the decad, i.e. in the sense between 2 decads, one potential, the other actual, since it is half of the sum of both. Hence many things, both in the heavens of the universe and on the earth, celestial bodies and creatures and plants, are in fact brought to completion by it. And that is why it is called chance, because it accompanies everything which happens, and critical time, because it has gained the most critical position and nature. The facts of the heavenly spheres provide important proof of this thesis, in that the sphere of the moon, which is the 8th from the top and the 3rd from the bottom, carries the influence and power of the influences which revolve around the earth, since it is considered to be the mediator between those above and those below. And it turns out to employ a hebdomad for this, with a tetrad assisting as shield bearer, for the tetrad, along with the hebdomad itself, is evidently a mean in the decad, with the result that necessarily completion and fulfillment are achieved for things by means of both numbers, especially given that 28, which is perfect in relation to its parts, is the product of the multiplication of them both, for it is 4 times 7. But the hebdomad's assistance is far greater, for the addition of the numbers from the monad to the hebdomad yields 28. So the 4 phases of the moon each last for a 7-fold season, and reasonably complete the month of this heavenly body, which consists of just about 28 days. We also see that the ocean is disposed by the moon in accordance with hebdomadic numbers. It is visibly greatest during the flood tide at the new moon. Then on the 2nd day it has withdrawn a bit, and on the 3rd day it is still less, and gradually the swelling of the flood tide decreases more and more until the 7th day, which displays the moon halved, and then again following this, on the 8th day it becomes again just as it was on the 7th day, that is, the same in power, and on the 9th as it was on the 6th, and on the 10th as it was on the 5th, and so on. On the octad. We describe the octad as the first actual cube, and as the only number within the decad to be even times even, since 4 appears to combine the characteristics of being odd-even and even times even in admitting only 2 divisions up to the monad, one of itself and the other of its parts. All the ways in which it is put together are excellent and equilibrated tunings. First, it results from the only two numbers within the decad which are neither engenderers or engendered, I mean from 1 and 7. Then it results from the two which are even odd, one potentially and the other actually, i.e. from 2 and 6. Then it results from the first two odd numbers, i.e. 3 and 5. And this is the combination which is elementary for the generation of cubes, and is the first such sum, since the cube before it, 1, comes about without combination, while the one after it results from the next three odd numbers, 7, 9, and 11. And fourthly, it results from 4 taken twice, and 4 is the only number which both engenders and is engendered. Clear traces of the Ogdoad can be found in the heavens too, for there are 8 spheres of the heavenly bodies, and there are 8 circles which astronomers most need to understand. The 4 greatest of these are the ones that touch one another: the equator, the zodiac, the horizon, and the one which passes through the poles, which some call the meridian, others the collier, and the 4 lesser ones, which do not touch one another at all, are the Arctic and Antarctic circles and the summer and winter tropics. The Ogdoad is called safety and foundation, since it is a leader, because 2 is a leader. The seed of the Ogdoad is the first even number. When multiplied by the tetrad, it makes 32, which is the time in which they say that 7-month children are formed. The 8th sphere encompasses the whole, hence the saying, all is 8. In 8 spheres they revolve around the 9th, Earth. On the Ennead. The Ennead is the greatest of the numbers within the decad, and is an unsurpassable limit. At any rate, it marks the end of the formation of specific identities as follows. Not only does it happen that, after the 9th pitch, there is no further super-particular musical ratio, but also addition naturally turns from the natural end to the beginning, and from both of these to the middle. At any rate, as regards the word, it is probably a riddling reference to affinity and equivalence, in the sense that it is called Ennead as if it were Henad, of everything within it, and by derivation from 1. That number admits nothing beyond the Ennead, but rather everything circles around within it, is clear from the so-called recurrences. There is natural progression up to it, but after it there is repetition, for 10 becomes a monad by the subtraction of one elementary quantity, i.e. 1 Ennead, and again 11 and 20 become a dyad by the subtraction of either of the 2 Enneads, and 12 and 30 become a triad, and again 100 becomes a monad when 11 Enneads are subtracted, and so on ad infinitum, so that it is by no means possible for there to subsist any number beyond the 9 elementary numbers. Hence they called it Oceanus and Horizon, because it encompasses both of these locations and has them within itself. Other evidence led them to call it Prometheus, because it prevents any number from proceeding further than itself, as is reasonable since it is thrice perfect, and does not lack the advantage of multiplication, but in fact is both the combination of 2 cubes, 1 and 8, and since it is a square, it alone of the numbers up to it has a triangular number as its square root. At any rate, because it does not allow the harmony of number to be dissipated beyond itself, but brings numbers together and makes them play in concert, it is called concord and limitation, and also sun, in the sense that it gathers things together. It is called lack of strife because of the correspondence and interchange of numbers from it to the monad. Both Orpheus and Pythagoras made a particular point of describing the Ennead as pertaining to the Curetes, on the grounds that the rites sacred to the Curetes are tripartite, with 3 rites in each part, or as chore. Both of these titles are appropriate to the triad, and the Ennead contains the triad 3 times. They also called it Hyperion, because it has gone beyond all the other numbers as regards magnitude, and Terpsichore, because the recurrence of the principles and their convergence on it as if from an end to a midpoint and to the beginning is like the turning and revolution of a dance.